when they told me I couldn't play, like the feeling in my stomach that I was responsible for that, like my stupidity, my actions, my immaturity led to that point, and like that, and I was in the mindset that like if there was a sliver of hope, like I'm gonna be ready. And then Dr. Serrano had some people check out my X-rays and stuff, and they said I should be fine. But like I knew I wasn't gonna have the game stolen from me again, let alone by my means and like my actions. And so like that was the biggest push for me, is knowing that like now I'm really like, this is the control I was looking for. It wasn't control over the spiritual world, it was control over myself and my thoughts and my actions.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Invictus Mindset Podcast. Today's guest is a former NFL linebacker and the co-founder for the MindStrong Project. He's also the host of the Chasing Edges podcast. The man, Brian Peters. Welcome to the show, man.
Dude, appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Really excited to connect with you. I first heard about you from your business partner with the MindStrong Project, Harvey Martin. And once I kind of started digging down that rabbit hole a little bit, as I mentioned to you a little bit offline, we're cut from the same cloth, man. So it's really cool to spend some time with you, and I'm excited to share your story today.
Yeah, dude, I'm glad we got linked. And then obviously like the connection through Harvey and Deuce and Logan, all those guys, just good people and good company. Nothing can really go wrong.
Totally, man. When I was kind of briefly chit-chatting with you around like, hey, what should we make your title? Like you said, you optimize yourself and you optimize others. And I loved that answer. Where did that kind of come from?
I was talking to Darlene Santor. She's a mental skills coach. She works one-on-one with a bunch of NBA and golf guys and that kind of thing. And we were on this hike and we're just talking about like why people always ask, like, even if you say you're a breathwork coach or mental skills coach or whatever, life coach, like it's like, what do you do? And just to like skip the steps of my identity as my title or like what I do, I just say, we figured out, like, I think she said a variant of it, but like I optimize myself and others and it shows up and like, it just, nobody questions that, like, and it's super subjective. So it's, what do I really do? Like, that's enough. And I think if that's my lifestyle and that's my title, like that's a hell of a life. And I'm happy to identify with that direction.
Totally. I also love how broad and inclusive it is. When I get that question, I always say, I help people and they're like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, I use fitness and health and lifestyle design as the vessel to help people enhance the quality of their life. But that's so long. And most of the time people are just like, this is crap. I'm not going to listen to this.
Yeah.
But I really loved your answer because it's so fascinating in a world of titles and labels, and people want the answer and the 5 steps to get the thing, where it's not the title. It's not what you do. It's who you are as a human. And that's what I'm excited to unpack, because you're somebody that truly does seek their edge, or in your terms, pulling from your podcast, chase your edge. And you don't just do that with talk, but you walk the walk. You wake up early. You're part of this thing called the 4 a.m. boys, which we can discuss a little bit later. You put yourself in uncomfortable situations through exposure training of sauna and ice and breath work. And you have had one hell of a journey to the NFL. And I'm just so excited to share this today, man.
No, it's been a saga for sure, but it's been super fun. A lot of good humans and a lot of good learning got done along the way.
Totally, man. I just kind of time-stamped a ton and threw a lot at our listeners and our viewers today, but they'll get an opportunity to kind of dig within those touch points here in a little bit. And so where did all this start, man? Like, what was your childhood like that kind of helped foster and groom this mentality of chasing your edge?
My childhood was pretty cookie cutter. Grew up moving around a little bit, settled in Pickerington, Ohio. I think kind of the start of it all was I was lucky enough to have an older brother. He was just 16 months older than me, Kevin Peters. And I was always chasing him and his buddies around. And I eventually ended up like competing, getting good enough to play with them in like summer baseball and those kind of things. So I think the role models and the competitors that he had around him, and himself included, me and him competed head to head even like once we were both in high school, I was a freshman, he was a junior, we were competing for the same spot. So it was always that kind of, that competitive environment. It bred maybe some resentment a little bit in baseball, but I think that truly is where like my separation or any edge I had young was that is just simple competitiveness and being around better humans, like even more developed humans than me.
I can totally relate to that in the sense of I'm the youngest with an older brother. And I've always felt like if I could beat my brother, I could beat anybody. And so I call it little brother syndrome or little brother mentality. That's cool.
Yeah, but that I think that's what it is. I think that's I don't want to call it like a Malcolm Gladwellian outlier scenario where like you're born in this month, so you're going to be on these teams because you're more developed or whatever. It works out. I think, but that foundation, if both kids are in sports or like in the same avenue of competition or art, whatever it ends up being, I think like that's the stage or at least a solid foundation for at least pushing yourself, because there's like, especially young and in high school, there's a gap between 16 and 18 from development. There's a gap there between definitely maturity. So like just being around those people unknowingly, unconsciously, and just like, okay, he's doing that, I'll do that. It's just like monkey see, monkey do. And then like being in the NFL is not much different. Like I walk into the NFL locker room, I know who the good players are, or I see who the most productive professionals are, and I observe what they do. Monkey see, monkey do. And then now it's like it's not much has changed. We try and overcomplicate things, but like most of the roads in professional sports have been paved for us one way or the other. It's just some of it's timing, opportunity, but a lot of it ends up just being discipline and hard work.
Totally. It's also the subtle art of listening, right? If you really truly zoom out and observe, like, all right, these are the best players. They're showing up early. They're leaving late. They're cleaning up. They're putting in the extra reps. They're not just checking a box, but they're moving with intention. They're breathing with intention. They're eating with intention. Everything they do has a rhyme and a reason. But sometimes, whether it's anxiety or some sort of mental block or just being accustomed to old bad habits, we don't absorb some of the things that are right in front of us or that we can listen to right there. You know, how were you able to kind of, you mentioned monkey see, monkey do, but how were you able to kind of play that game all the way to Northwestern?
Like as far as my upbringing, like I'll give a lot of credit to my high school coaches. Jay Sherrod and Jeff LaMonaco were incredible mentors for me. They taught me they taught me how to like have fun and play the game physically, and like being physical ends up being fun. And so like that, and then the dimensions of the culture and like how to be held responsible for the seniors. Like, and they did a really good job of building the culture. And luckily enough, they were there my entire career, and they're still there to this day. So they're obviously doing something right. They've won a bunch of state championships and those kind of things. But that passion for the game early, on top of like the competitiveness I already had, I think that was kind of the recipe that carried me there. And then when I was 16 years old, I crossed paths with Dr. Eric Serrano, who's an absolute stud in like the medical rehab supplement world, all those things, even the strength and conditioning world as well. I went to him with, I think, a torn groin the first time, and I was trying to play in the state playoffs, and he it fixed me up, ended up playing, and then I ended up spraining an ankle, and he couldn't walk going in, could sprint coming out of his office kind of deal. So I got my curiosity sparked early on why this guy was so good and all these other doctors sucked, basically. So I ended up staying in touch with him, and he got me on like base supplements in high school, just like aminos and omegas, things like that. And like that showed up, and like I probably the tipping point and this understanding of what dedication and even just a flirting with being extremist in the performance world. Dr. Serrano put me together with one of his disciples the second semester of my senior year of high school. So I chose not to play basketball and baseball and just run track and train for football, since I was going on scholarship to Northwestern. And I was a decent player and all those things, but training with him, I used to drive like 40 minutes across town to train with him once a month for a week. So like I'd get the program for the next 3 weeks and come back. But the workouts I did in his basement were it hurt to press the gas pedal driving home, or my hands were like shaking as I was trying to drive home. Just I got introduced to time under tension training, just maximal weight and max effort, things along those lines. And then learning how to probably strengthen my legs and run, showed up. And then by the time I got to Northwestern, like I showed up like a very developed safety. I was a safety at the time. And actually, like I committed as a linebacker, basically just because I was tall. But when I got there, they said I'm playing safety. And then like after a week, they're like, this guy's going to be too big. Because I showed up at almost 220 pounds to play safety, and I was hitting people in like helmetless 7-on-7s and stuff. So they just saw the physicality and thought I was going to translate. But then I kind of fell into the routine and some of the complacency, and I won't say complacency, but like I did what I was told there, but I abandoned what worked for me. And so getting to their program, it was more powerlifting. It's learning how to power clean, snatch, things like that. And I got away from the time and attention, the hypertrophy stuff I was doing that was very effective for me. And that was like a learning point. I didn't see it at the time. I didn't have the wisdom to know the difference. I was just, again, I was there putting the lotion on the skin, just listening to the strength coach and the coaches and those kind of things. Like that's what you do inside of a college football program. But like that was a divider for me where eventually after about 2 years, I saw the decline. And was able to get back on track by the time I left Northwestern. But yeah, I had a lot of good mentors in high school football, a trainer in high school that pushed me really hard, and then my doctor was kind of like the guiding light the whole time. And eventually, by the time I got to Northwestern, had some things happen and didn't get drafted and had to learn all that stuff in hyperdrive again.
Breathing, movement, circulation, digestion. What do all these body functions have in common? Our muscles. There are over 600 muscles in the human body that are responsible for supporting our daily activities. That's why your muscle health is incredibly important. On this podcast, I always discuss seeking our peak expression and striving to maximize our human potential. And so I try to share with you the top products that I find on the market. My H&B is a clinically proven ingredient that has been shown to help build and maintain lean muscle mass, increase strength, improve recovery, and enhance body composition. Learn more about your muscle health at myhmb.com/Invictus. Once again, that's myhmb.com/Invictus. Enhance your muscle health and enhance your life. Trident Coffee is sponsoring this episode of the Invictus Mindset Podcast. My guys over at Trident taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good and bad, and everything in between. At Trident, they're storytellers. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. They help create connections through symbology and storytelling that engage their customers on an emotional level, and this distinguishes them from other coffee brands. You can find Trident in Imperial Beach and in Coronado. They offer over 14 plus nitro cold brews along with dairy-free options. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from their keto bakery. All of these options will allow you to support your health and fitness journey with Trident Coffee. They're more than just a coffee company. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code Invictus20 for 20% off online and in tap rooms. Once again, that's tridentcoffee.com. Use code Invictus20 for 20% off online and in tap rooms. Take your coffee experience to the next level. Striving to maximize your potential through health, wellness, and high-level fitness requires tremendous midline strength and stability. Allow the crew over at Element 26 to co-pilot your journey so that you can destroy PRs and not destroy your body. They have this amazing self-locking weightlifting belt that provides a 4-inch uniform profile for optimal intra-abdominal pressure and back support. This quick-release technology allows the pressure to be placed on the buckle and pin instead of the Velcro. Nothing's worse than being at the bottom of a squat and having the Velcro pop on your weightlifting belt. Head on over to element26.co and use code Invictus10 at checkout to receive 10% off all online purchases. Head on over to element26.co and use code Invictus10 at checkout to receive 10% off all online purchases. Destroy your PRs, not your body. I want to bookmark you there for a quick second and kind of backtrack a little bit to your relationship and experience with Dr. Eric Serrano. What were some of those sessions like? If you could paint a picture for our audience in his basement, what was a sample session kind of like that you went through when you first started training with him?
Yeah, so training, you're not referring to like when he fixed my groin and my ankle and stuff. You want like the actual weightlifting sessions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty cut and dry, and they haven't deviated too much since then. But it is different variants. Like as far as like what he was big on lat development, so we did a lot of different variants of pull-ups, different grips, different finger like doing 2-finger pull-ups. He had rotational handles, so we're doing uneven pull-ups, a lot of weighted pull-ups, a lot of time under tension with reps. We went through different protocols of I'm blanking on it right now, cluster training, where it's minimal rest as reps increase. So 1 rep, rest 6 seconds, 2 reps, rest 6 seconds, up to 6, 8 reps, things along those lines, which we're savage for size and strength for me.
That's a really cool way to sneak in some hypertrophy while simultaneously not making it like a set of 20 to 30 where reps can kind of get kind of sloppy.
Yeah, it kind of flirts on this little lactic threshold too, where depending on the body part, it's funny, like once you start doing clusters across your whole body, what you feel and what muscles have the endurance. Obviously, you're doing calf raises up to 10 reps. Pull-ups are 6 to get to 6 is tough, and then we're doing then push-ups like 6 to 8 can be tough, especially then when you start to compound. Usually we're doing 3 sets of all these circuits we were doing, but they're all tough, and most of them incorporated some variant of time under tension, whether it was unilateral or bilateral. But the upper body days usually started with the pull-ups, which was a shock to me because everywhere else you start on the bench press. Then after that, like I don't think I've ever straight barbell benched in Dr. Serrano's basement. Everything was dumbbells. It was single arm under tension at 90 degrees while you're doing 1.5 reps. There's a lot of 1.5 reps showing up just for muscle stability and control, and like the way to rebound out of a Bulgarian and things like that. Big Bulgarian guy on leg day. And then a lot of it turned into hypertrophy, whether it's like around the world lunges, front, side, back, 15, so 3 reps equals 1 rep, and it's 15 reps each leg. It's 20 reps of basically like a pit shark concept, but just a dumbbell hanging from elevation and doing 20 reps of 1.5 reps, and you're just blowing yourself up. But it translated, like my speed and stability. I felt like my power was big, even though we weren't big as far as like triple extension in his basement training. A lot of the triple extension showed up. Not triple extension, I guess, in this scenario, but a lot of the posterior chain strength stuff we did was with our toes and our feet engaged. So whether we're doing, I don't know if you've ever seen me do the isometric hamstring curls. So you're hanging from a pull-up bar, your hips are through, heels to your butt, and your toes are plantar flexed. So it's like you're pressing on a gas pedal. That triggers, so your glutes, hamstrings, calves, and feet are all firing together. So you get this connective strength through a lot of his things too, same as your flipping up grips on pull-ups. We're doing different extension work. We're doing dumbbell rotations for forearms and wrists, and I had broken my hand 3 times in college, so we did a lot of that stuff.
You broke your hand 3 times in college. Did you just get stuck underneath the shoulder pad or hit a helmet?
Once was Rex Burkhead's knee. Another one, I went to shoulder somebody and my hand caught you can see some of the breaks. They've calcified a decent amount in my hand.
That's brutal.
So yeah, I spent most of my last 2 seasons in a cast in some way, shape, or form.
What I'm hearing too from the training with Dr. Eric Serrano is just simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And I think now, modern day, especially with social media, everybody wants to be cute and over accentuate the complexity, but sounds like simple shit in a different shirt almost every day. And then slight variance with regards to time under tension, grip, but then also the integration of different planes of motion. Because you could very easily get incredibly linear, meaning forward and back in the weight room. And I like that he used multiplanar movement and also educated you on, what does it mean to have hips through and plantar flex? So that way you understand physiologically and biomechanically what is actually going on. And I'm a huge believer in education for athletes, so then they can apply it whether the coach is present or not.
Yeah, and I think that, I think he's a great coach, and I think there's some great coaches out there that have the ability to translate that on top of coaching you. And those are some of my favorite humans too, because anywhere I went, whether it was my PTs or my strength coach, I was always asking questions, some way, shape, or form. And then even sometimes it rubbed people the wrong way, because why are we doing this? You don't have a good enough reason, particularly in the physical therapy room, just because I got really into obviously more of a heat modality and lasers and things like that. But those questions eventually uncovered the answers I was looking for, or at least more of an understanding, or most of what I heard through college was just periodization.
Which has an expiration point. You can only have linear periodization for so long. And I love that you mentioned the importance of questions. I found it on your Instagram. Ask the right questions if you're to find the right answers. I love that.
It's a simple concept, and you have to be able to understand the question that's being asked where you can answer as a human either. And then it's just I heard it, Gabby Reese is one of my favorite podcasts to listen to.
She's great.
Yeah, she's a stud. You've been over there a couple times to train too, haven't you?
Yeah, they're phenomenal. I've learned so much from them. And when I was going through some life stuff, I just remember training with Laird in the pool. And I was so fearful because I'm not super water competent. And he throws 75-pound dumbbells in my hand, and we're walking at the bottom of their pool, and he's teaching me how to do what they call ammo swims, holding the dumbbell, and he's having me jump in the pool, which is similar to what they did with Joakim Noah. And I'm hypoxic the whole time, but still there's this unique euphoria because I'm learning something new. Never did I feel like I was going to die. I was like, hey, if I pass out, they'll probably bring me back to life in some capacity. It's almost like a magical experience when you spend time with Gabby Reese and Laird Hamilton. And then when he threw me into the ice tub, and I was forced to just deal with my own thoughts and manage discomfort with my breath, it was you can't distract, you can't deflect, you can't blame. It's just you versus you. And I mean, in a 2-hour conversation with each of them simultaneously with a 90-minute training session, your whole world and cognitive capacity is just evolved. And so huge shout out to those guys in the XPT crew, because they're just awesome humans. They optimize themselves and others just like you.
Yeah, massively. And I've learned a lot just from watching them as well. Just even Gabby's coaching methods, I like a lot, just the nuances and how she lets people go and then coaches. A lot of times, early in my disability as a leader on a football team or as a coach now, trying to get them to do it right the first time, when really experience is the best teacher. And then just, yeah, their ability to cultivate a community and ask questions nonstop and grow and that. And she does a great job on her podcast asking questions, obviously too. But the whole community is dynamite. PJ, Mark, the whole wrecking crew, and then a couple guys I've met throughout the way, being linked with them. It's definitely people that I'll always want to keep around me for sure.
Totally, man. It's so cool to pause and self-reflect a little bit on how you meet one person, and just through conversation and connection, then you meet another awesome human. And I say this all too often on our podcast, which we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, but it's just like attracts like. And it's cool when you see high performers that, maybe they're high performers in one element of life, but then they have this unique desire to have all the spokes in the wheel be a 7 or above. And I think it's really cool that how you do anything is how you do everything. And if you can really have the nuanced, deep conversations that subtly feel like the mundane sometimes, typically there's something to learn, something that can help move the needle in the right direction. And you've been that guy who definitely is that Rudy mentality, that underdog style that just in studying your story the last month or so, I'm man, I'm a huge fan over here. And you ultimately, overcame a lot of injuries and a lot of challenge to find yourself at Northwestern, where you had one hell of a career, What was your career like there at Northwestern? And then what kind of came after as you were pursuing the NFL?
My career was interesting at Northwestern. I mean, it seems so fast and so long ago at this point now, but I was pretty immature. I remember driving back to Ohio a bunch from Chicago because I wanted to go to a party school. I wanted to have more fun, that kind of thing. And there wasn't really time for fun in the structure anyways. Like my entire football career at Northwestern, minimum 5 days a week, we're there at the facility at 6 a.m. So like we kind of let loose on the weekends. And I grew up a little bit going to Ohio State and Ohio University, which are pretty popular schools. And so like I had a misconception about what I wanted out of my experience, and I was just immature. And Coach Fitzgerald, who's still there to this day, was a big influence on me. My true sophomore year, I redshirted. So my redshirt year, I was frustrated. I wasn't playing X, Y, and Z. And so like when the team went away, I'd go back to Ohio, and it was just like keeping the cord attached. But come my sophomore year, Fitz kind of sat me down and was always in my ear at practice, or like would pull me aside in between meetings and things like that, and talk about my potential and talk about basically like where you spending your time, like where you spend your time is where you see your results. And so like, and then learning from the two guys I had ahead of me, which were Brad Phillips and Brendan Smith, both had different styles of play, which was also different than my style of play. But that's where I ended up coming into touch with this incredible graduate assistant, and it all kind of just came to fruition in this big stroke of about a year or so. And I got to the point where like, yeah, I can play. And that's what eventually kept me going through all those leagues to get to the NFL. But like, I knew I could play. I got a couple games with a bunch of reps, and my redshirt freshman year, I was playing special teams to a high level. And then I started again observing. I started seeing the guys. Brad Phillips, he was so good because he's a heady player. Smitty, that Brendan Smith, this other player, was intuitive flow guy, wanted to be Ed Reed kind of guy. And so I'd watch film separately with both of them and see what they saw, and I ended up finding some nuances myself. And then this GA came along. So my redshirt freshman year, started playing more. Then redshirt sophomore year, I eventually got the starting spot over one of the other guys. But we had this graduate assistant, Alan Walking. I think he's the director of college scouting for the Philadelphia Eagles now. Great human. But he had just left his high school job in Columbus, Ohio, to come switch to coaching. And so he came in, and he just was like picking at me. He goes, what you learned from Smitty, what you learned from Brad. And I wasn't annoyed, but I was just like, he was holding me to a standard, and I didn't know it yet. And after that redshirt freshman season, he basically like had me evaluate the starters that were in front of me and compare 3 of their games to 3 of my games, and like start to tangibilize the skill sets, like physicality, footwork, ball skills, X, Y, and Z, intuitive nature, whatever. And then you started to see a tangible difference between this player here, me here, I'm better here. And so what do I need to work on? So that naturally led to like my goals for the off season and his ability to hold me accountable to them. And then that just snowballed. And then after I got that confidence in him in my corner, I was starting. I was lucky enough to have another team, like one of my other teammates played for a little bit in League Two, and he was right by my side, Jordan Maben. But we ended up doing this process where Alan would hold us accountable, and it started now, instead of like judging the guys on my team since I was a backup, now I'm judging the best guys in the Big Ten. So I'm breaking down the first, second, and third team honors guys from the Big Ten. Then going into my senior year, I did the country, and we started to lean into the idea of me getting a chance to play in the NFL. What do I need to do? What skills do I need to improve? And like that structure showed me the benefit of structure and like how to, again, develop a plan and execute. And I didn't end up getting drafted. I thought I would, but it put me in a good position, had the film to eventually get me into the CFL.
It also helped groom your eye, it sounds like, because it's so fast sometimes to observe the best of the best. But if you start with just the locals, those that are on your team, you understand the terminology, you spend time around those guys, you're starting to understand, oh, that's why his shoulders were turned that way. That's why his feet were operating that capacity. That's why he said this. That's why he called this audible when he observed this, set up by the offense. And it's cool to hear, the art of watching film. It's very similar to the art of listening when you host a podcast, where you're trying to piece together the puzzle to kind of create a little bit of imagery. And it sounds to me that, very similar to Kobe, you got into observational learning, and it started with your team, and then it gradually became a little bit of comparison between what you're doing versus what they're doing, and then evolved into some of the best players within your conference, and then the best players within college football. And it sounds to me that like you were just gaining more tools in your toolbox, which ultimately led you to, okay, you have this potential to maybe get drafted into the NFL. Sounds like that did not happen. Cognitively, what went through your brain in that moment where, maybe you have expectation, you have family, you have friends. I just flew back from Minnesota a couple days ago as our teams competed at Granite Games, and I watched American Underdog and the Kurt Warner story. And, just seeing what he went through emotionally when he had this belief in himself, amazing senior year, expecting to get drafted, and the call never came. What was that experience like for you? And then what kind of came next?
Super funny though. So I went through the Arena League after I got done playing at one point, and that's the same arena team Kurt Warner played for.
Oh, that's cool. What was it? The Iowa
Barnstormers, baby.
Yeah, the Iowa Barnstormers. That show or that movie was so cool.
Yeah, I need to check it out. One of my other buddies told me to watch it too. But no, like as far as like the draft day experience, like I have an agent and I've talked to scouts leading up to the draft and things like that. Say, hey, if you're like, we're thinking late round, 6, 7. If not, we'll definitely grab you as an undrafted free agent. And so like, if you listen to that, like you believe that. And like, I definitely did. I didn't believe I was going to be drafted in a high round. I didn't have a lot of confidence that I was going to be drafted at all, but I knew I think I deserved a shot. And that's an expectation in and of itself too, that I probably shouldn't have had. But it helped fuel the fire because I didn't get a call on draft day. Not to say, hey, anybody call you yet? But like, it was just the only person that called me was Pat Fitzgerald asking me what's going on because they thought I would get a shot too. And so eventually I didn't get like a call for another 2-3 days. And that was just to come to rookie mini camp on a tryout basis. So I could go there and beat somebody out for their contract that they've already signed. But like that was kind of once that ball got rolling. And then once I went down so I got invited to Tampa Bay and Chicago's rookie mini camps and went down to Tampa Bay. They had Mark Barron, their first round draft pick, another safety. And then I think there's 2 other undrafted free agents signed. And then there was probably 6 or 7 other guys competing to take one of the free agent spots. So it's an unlikely scenario, but it was Schiano's first year down with the Buccaneers. And he ran it incredibly tough. Like we were running 2 days with like strength and conditioning in between, like running hundreds in between 2 days. And after the second practice, I think it was 2 or 3 linebackers popped hamstrings. So I had to go play because I was the biggest safety. I had to go play Sam linebacker the rest of the camp and ended up, I held my own. I learned some lessons. One of the lessons was like never pass up the opportunity to be physical, even if like you're just in helmets or if you're just shells, no helmets and things like that. Cause like I met this running back in the hole one time and just like tagged off, did my thing. And the coach, who was Brian Cox, who's a legendary player, absolute savage, he asked me if I would have hit him here. I go, yeah, I would have smoked him, coach. He goes, well, I'll never know. And now the coaches will never know. And now we don't know if you're physical. And so that was a lesson that I took with me, especially to Canada after this part of the story closes. But
in that moment right there, though, does it go through your brain? If I hit this guy, this guy is going to, I'm going to have a target on my chest, or is it survival of the fittest? Obviously, you'd be satisfying the coaches and making a name for yourself. But then what does that do within the locker room if the expectation is like, oh yeah, we're not hitting guys right now, but then simultaneously you're trying to prove yourself and show your physicality?
Yeah, and that was a lesson learned. Like that kind of was the root of the lesson that I carried into the NFL down the road, especially in a rookie minicamp scenario. There's no holds bar. Like everybody there's scratching and clawing. You get even in training camp, one, that's how I stayed on a team or made a team, is because I went balls to the wall in practice. Some guys hated it, but I was trying to make it. So I didn't really have too much regret or sympathy for other people complaining. But then like as you get to veteran status, and when I was a captain with the Texans, I saw younger kids doing that, and I like saw myself in doing that. I understood that like it's a longevity thing, but I also like, it always made me double check myself. Or like, I was like, where's my edge right now? Do I still have that dog that like every rep in practice? Like, no, I haven't been doing that. So it'd give me some juice and reminder of what got me there, should have kept me there. And those are some of my own demons, but no, like there's the locker room in a rookie mini camp is just like, it's a bunch of strangers. There's not friendships unless guys played together in college. Like everybody's just there, uncomfortable, anxious, and they want to make the dream happen. But then I went to the Bears camp the next weekend, and they had a 3rd-round draft pick. He didn't end up playing much in the NFL, but in my opinion, I outplayed him and outplayed their undrafted free agents they had under contract, and they still didn't sign me because they already had their mind made up or whatever. And but like those two camps together, like the success there, and then like after the Buccaneers camp, Brian Cox said, "Hey, it sounds like we're gonna bring you back. You got to gain 20 pounds." I go, "All right, let's ride," and got super hyped. So like I knew I could play. And like that was what kept me going, and that eventually led to like kind of the chasing edges mindset, in the essence that like I didn't get signed every time I got like a door closed in my face or cut. Like I was like, all right, I got to work on something. I need to find an edge somewhere. I need to improve part of my game. And so that bled into like not quitting when I didn't get any calls weeks after those rookie mini camps and stuff.
How'd you kind of support yourself at that time? Because obviously you weren't getting signed to major contracts. You know, what was the monetization kind of like, and what was your lifestyle like to support your journey?
Oh yeah, that's a story in of itself. But I was still living in Chicago. I moved down into like Rogers Park, not a great area in Chicago, at least where I was living. And I was living on a mattress behind a couch in two of my buddies' apartment that they're starting their jobs, like I think like logistics and like medical device sales or something. But living on a mattress behind their couch, just like pinching pennies. And I started like training kids. And then eventually one of the kids I was training bled into me basically like being a fucking Manny for them. Like I'd pick the kid up and go train him at Lifetime. And then I'd pick up his sisters and just bring them home. So it was like a massive hit to my ego, but like they were paying enough cash to where I could buy supplements, train, and I could keep pursuing the dream until my agent would give me a call. So that went on through the summer, and eventually my agent didn't want to send me to Canada because like back then you had to sign a 2-year deal, and agents in the U.S. don't get any cut from that. So he got me out to the Arena Football League to like stay in shape and like keep my skills. So like if an NFL team calls and they ask if he's in shape, yeah, he's been playing, whatever. So I go out to Des Moines, Iowa, thinking I'm already on the Barnstormers roster. Like my agent said, yeah, head out and they'll get you situated. And I show up to like a 13-man tryout for 2 spots, and was lucky enough to earn one of those spots, and played there for about 4 weeks. Some of the most fun football I ever played. Just running and banging guys into hitting guys into the walls and talking crap to the fans, then pouring beer on you and stuff. It was super fun, but you're playing for $400 a week and just getting by. And then so I came back after that in the same realm. Like I came back in the same monetary means, was training myself at like 9 p.m. at night, and then like waking up and doing it all over again kind of deal.
That's tough, man. What's the Arena Football League kind of like? Because I saw on the American Underdog, as I mentioned to you, the field is a little smaller. The pace of the game is so fast. What was that adaptation kind of like for you? And how was it going from the NFL style play to now a different type of play, but then there's similar principles involved?
Yeah, my position was just fun, so it kind of worked out in my favor. I played this jack linebacker position where basically like I'm like 3 yards off the ball, I clear run, make sure they don't run the ball, and then I just run to the wide side of the field and hit anybody that moves. So like that was my deal. But like special teams were just like I don't know, what was the little game we used to play, Spitfire or Crossfire? It was just bodies flying everywhere. And then it wasn't great turf either that we were on. So like you're getting burned up, but like it was super fun because of the fast pace. Like I think the play clock was shorter too. But it was, I think it was fun. And then like, obviously you got the forward motion and that ended up paying off for me because I knew how to guard it by the time I got to Canada. But yeah, it was fun. But yeah, anyways, I ended up working out for a UFL team, got a chance to come to train with them in training camp, and eventually got cut when the NFL rosters had their cuts. They just took all the NFL guys back when the UFL was around. It folded that year. It didn't end up happening anyways. But
that's tough.
I thought football was over then. Like I was crushed. I was crying in my car on the way home. And
what year was that?
That was my first year out. That was 2012.
Okay.
So driving back, just kind of like figuring out what I'm going to do. My agent says like, I was like, let's go. I was like, let's go to Canada kind of deal. And he sent out emails. Nobody responded. So I was like, all right, let me send an email from my words. And so I sent like a 2-paragraph deal saying like, I'll be a dog for you. This is my tape. These are my coaching references. Give me a shot. And I sent it to every NFL team and every CFL team, and only one team responded, the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the CFL. And so they brought me up to their last couple of weeks of their season on the practice squad, and I signed a 2-year deal for 13 and 14 after that. And then this is where all the little nuanced stories come in. I came back from that little stint in 2012 on my birthday, and I went out with a buddy of mine, and I ended up getting jumped by 3 bouncers.
And also, just to note for our listeners, your birthday is on Halloween.
Yep.
So you're all dressed up as Batman.
Yep. And
you're just back from kind of this little stint in 2012 where, maybe your ego got a little love. You got paid to play the sport that you grew up idolizing, and you made it to the professional level. And so just to give people a little bit of insight into the psychology of the story you're about to tell.
Oh yeah. And then probably, I don't even know if I've ever told this nuance of the story. So I'm leaving my hotel room in Canada. And they always kind of got those mirrors next to the door in a hotel room. I'm in a hotel room right now. They probably got one. But I remember like with my bags packed and like I got like $3,000 in my bank account. I feel rich. And I like opened the door. I see myself in the mirror, and I was like, all right, like you got a chance. Like you can go train. Like you already know you can make some money. But you can train how you want to, and you got a contract to play football. And like I remember saying, I literally remember saying, I'm in control. And so get back, and I was definitely in control of the outcome of this terror of a night. But I get back and I go out for my birthday with my one buddy. It was on a Thursday, so like my high school buddies didn't come out or anything. It was just me and him. Definitely got too drunk and eventually got jumped by some bouncers. I was dancing on stage. I like dancing when I go out, and I got down off the stage and thought everything was fine. He said, no, guys on stage, you're gone. So I left the bar. There's a couple bars connected to it. So I walked back in through another bar, continued to drink, and then eventually was ordering some shots for a little group of people I was with. And people started taking shots, and I didn't think we had enough shots in my stupor. And the bartender that I was arguing with waved the bouncer over as the same bouncer that threw me out. And he hit me with my favorite line. He goes, oh, Batman's back. And Batman was definitely back. And Batman went out the back door this time, not the front door. And ended up getting stomped out by some bouncers, broke my jaw, cracked my mandibles.
That's brutal.
Cuts and bruises, ribs, those kind of things. And ended up having to get wired shut that night. And Dr. Serrano was actually super helpful that night. My mom called him at 3 a.m, and he called the best oral surgeon in Ohio to drive a couple hours to do my surgery that morning.
Oh, wow. What a blessing.
Yeah, massive blessing. But like the first thing I remember waking up after surgery was that I'm not in control. Like basically, I don't know why that was the first thought in my head. So I actually went down kind of like a spiritual rabbit hole after that. Started going to Bible study and learning, and I read the Bible, things along those lines, just to understand what side of me was asking those questions, and what was my faith, where's it at. something I'd never done. I was the center of the universe for that portion of my life. Up to that point, I didn't care too much about religion or things along those lines. I knew I was Christian, but what did that mean? And so like that went down a whole different rabbit hole. But being wired shut was a massive wake up call. In essence, one, with how my mandibles cracked, they initially told me they didn't know if I could play football again. So I thought I had the game stolen from me for about a week. And then, so I was sipping liquid Percocet on my parents' couch, and Dr. Serrano comes over, tells me to get off my ass in his Puerto Rican accent. And I started training in his basement 5 days a week, sometimes 6. And by the time I was wired shut for 7 weeks, that first week I dumped about 20 pounds. And then after that, after I dumped the pain pill or the pain liquid and the juice box, and by the time 7 weeks was up, I was bigger, stronger, faster. I gained all my weight back and then some. All my numbers were the highest they've been. I felt strong and fast running. And I actually went back after that winter and did Northwestern's Pro Day again at 15 pounds heavier. I ran faster, jumped higher, benched more, did everything to a higher degray. And so like,
and
that's
how old
where
were you here?
23, okay. 23, 24, because I redshirted. Yeah, so I think that was my 24th birthday.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, 24th birthday. But I still had some growing up to do, same as I kind of consider myself an extremist, where I wanted the best of both worlds. Like I wanted to be the hardest trainer, and I still wanted to be able to go out once a week and go hard in that world and dance and have fun and those kind of things. But there's limits and boundaries to that I learned the hard way.
2 important factors for us over at Invictus Mindset are true care and attention to detail. My friends over at RX Smart Gear have been bringing innovative fitness tools to the market since 2009. From their award-winning Evo speed ropes to their amazing gymnastics grips to their line of inflatable fitness equipment, they're constantly looking to problem solve within the fitness industry. They're always allowing us to have our gear work for us rather than against us. Hop on over to RX Smart Gear and use discount code Invictus Mindset to shop their latest cutting edge gear. Have your gear work with you and not against you. As you were going through this journey and experiencing the liquid food diet and, dabbling with your spirituality and religion, what was kind of fostering with regards to your work ethic? You mentioned training with Dr. Serrano in his basement. What's going through your brain to maintain the intrinsic motivation? Was it that somebody said you wouldn't play football again? And, what was that motivational factor that was really the underlying piece that awoke the dog inside you? And how did you put that into action?
Probably the cleanest way to say it is when they told me I couldn't play, like the feeling in my stomach that I was responsible for that, like my stupidity, my actions, my immaturity led to that point. And like that, and I was in the mindset that like, if there was a sliver of hope, like I'm going to be ready. And then Dr. Serrano had some people check out my x-rays and stuff, and they said I should be fine. But like, I knew I wasn't going to have the game stolen from me again, let alone by my means and like my actions. And so like, that was the biggest push for me, is knowing that like, now I'm really like, this is the control I was looking for. It wasn't control over the spiritual world. It was control over myself and my thoughts and my actions. So taking that into account, like even being on a liquid diet where I was drinking just like 3-liter cups, like I was blending up steak, rice, whatever. I did cookies, I did Chipotle, I did anything. Just it was a calorie game at that point. And then I learned how to supplement. And like this off season rolled into another turning point in my life where a friend of mine, Zach Boren, who was an Ohio State captain, got me in to train with their NFL guys, even though I was in the CFL. And I was able to train with them for conditioning one day, and their assistant strength coach, Anthony Schlegel, invited me back, and he said, "You're welcome to train with these guys if you're in town." And I said, "Yeah, I would love that." I had no money. Obviously, I was already out of the being wired shut and things like that, but I had the understanding that I learned from supplements during this time to help balance out the weight gain back and those kind of things.
What kind of supplements were you taking at that time?
Still the same thing. I've taken the same supplements since I'm almost 17 years old. They're Infinity Fitness amino acids. They're freeform and branched chains, essentials and branched chains mixed together. And then Alpha Omega 3 is another one of Infinity Fitness's products, but still one of the best fish oils. It's like those are really, as far as the supplements I take, like the ones where I can I know I feel something, they're probably the biggest supplements, I'd say. I think I'm trying to think through everything, but like if I'm off my fish oils, I can feel my joints. If I'm off my aminos, and I've demoed a bunch of aminos at this point, probably 10 or 12 brands, and I still come back to there. I like amino code as well, but it was just aminos and omegas. It wasn't anything. It was like a 3, 6, 7, and 9 blend with it had avocado oil in it too, so the burn was down, things like that. But but around at the same time, so now up to this point, those were my supplements with a crap multivitamin at the time. But I started training at Ohio State, so we'd train there 5 days a week, and then me and my buddy Zach would go and train at Serrano's every Thursday and Friday, and then every Saturday we would do arms and yoga as a recovery day, and training our faces off. So we're running and lifting at Ohio State every day. That was just kind of how the group rolled. It was a blue collar group. It was Corey Lindsley, who's one of the highest paid centers in the NFL still, John Simon, who's on year 10 plus, Nate Ebner, who got 10 years in and played Olympics of rugby. It was legit group. Then you had Coleman, a couple other guys in and out, Jack Muir, just a good group of guys that worked hard. And so we're training our faces off, and then me and Zach are doubling down on 2 days on Thursday, Friday. And I started to plateau about, I think it was 3 months into that, because all those guys were about to go to OTAs, and that was the first time I got my blood tested. And so I got allergy tested, and I got all my complexes tested. And just because I had plateaued so hard, Dr. Serrano wanted to see where I was at, and I was overtraining. And I had I still remember him sitting me outside in his backyard telling me that I have the testosterone and DHEA levels of a 83-year-old woman. And so that was my first intro to I have boundaries on how hard I can train and how necessary recovery is. So that was a whole nother learning curve, balancing that, learning how to recover better, learning about hydration, very simple things that ended up going a long way. Because I wasn't taking anything crazy. It was the craziest thing I took during that time was Cell Tech, which is still just aminos, a heavy dose of creatine, and sugar, just like dextrose, which again, that's still one of my back pocket things if I ever need to gain weight on short notice. And then obviously I know the benefits of creatine at this point as well, and I was taking creatine most of my career as well. But then so understanding now that my blood, just because I felt good didn't mean my blood was in order. I started, I checked that every offseason I came home. And then when I got into the NFL, I checked it quarterly. So that was just another edge, another tool to maintain optimal performance. And, but eventually, all this time spent with these guys at Ohio State and Dr. Serrano, even Dr. Toma was still influencing me. He was my trainer when I was 18, but he became a chiropractor while I was in college. And he's an extremist in the sense, and he's actually the person that introduced me to the cold tub in a different context.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So when I was in Canada, he had seen some of the Wim Hof stuff and done a little bit of research, but he basically told me I had to train myself to go up to my neck for 10 minutes in the cold tub. And then eventually that graduated to 20 minutes. And so
that's a long time.
Long time. And I didn't know anything about breathing at this point. I just knew that was what he wanted. And I ended up holding on to the cold tub up to my neck for 10 minutes. Yeah, at least 10 minutes through half of my NFL career until I learned the proper institution of it. But and eventually it's super funny because when I was out at the XPT experience in Kauai, and
oh, very cool.
I was telling Larry and Gabby how I found the cold, and I was like, I wonder what the research was back in the day that he said it was backed for 10, 20 minutes or whatever it was. And I called him and he's like, yeah, I made that up, dude. Like it was just like a mental resiliency thing. And then like, I figured it wouldn't be bad for you. And I was like, all right, awesome.
Isn't that so funny how things evolve over time, and some of the old tricks of the trade of, now icing is not necessarily the best for healing, but is good for pain management. And, these heat shock proteins and cold shock proteins and the things that can enhance a norepinephrine dump, and why they're good now is now floating to the surface versus back in the day. It's like, oh, if it's hard, yeah, you should probably do it.
Yeah. And I get that too. And I just think it's like, if you look at the 10,000 feet of it, like I'm always just hesitant to accept things at face value anyway, especially from
question
like PTs.
Everything.
Yeah. PTs and doctors. Like I've been so it started in college when I tore up my labrum and I had 3 orthopedic surgeons tell me I needed to get surgery. But I was at Skype. I Skyped Dr. Serrano at the time. And he goes, can you do a dip? Can you do this movement and this movement without pain? I go, yeah. He goes, you don't need surgery. And so I had to go toe to toe with orthopedic surgeons and my head trainer on, no, I don't want surgery. And then this is on me. So my coaches are telling me to get the surgery. Then I stuck to my guns and I still have never needed surgery on that shoulder. I just do the same shoulder strengthening routines. And that like opened my eyes to not take things and just like be a follower in the medical field. And the same with the ice and the guy that invented rice came out and he said he was wrong like 4 years ago at this point now. Mm-hmm. And if you just look at the evolution of it, like they used to hard cast ACLs. Now you're moving in a machine right after surgery. Things like that, just step back sometimes and kind of like, even just like me learning, I'm still learning the heat and the ice. Like I've done it a million times, but then the Hubermans of the world are pushing different thoughts in that realm forward. And like, just because I'm cold, what's really happening inside? Is cold really at face value just a mental resiliency thing, or is it something to help gauge your internal temperature? Because if you're cold, your internal furnace is going to turn up. So when should you do that? You should probably do that in the morning. Like you should get this temperature increase to go along with the hormones and endorphins that are changing. And the same thing is like, because I used to be like a cold in the morning and at night, because like, oh, raising your body temperature, lowering your body temperature before you go to sleep, because that's what your body's going to do. At the time made logical sense to me, but now it doesn't as much. And so now I'm doing different protocols. And it's just like, I think that open-mindedness and like understanding early that like doctors don't know everything, head coaches and head strength trainers don't know everything. Every human's really winging it in general. Every parent's winging it. Like everybody's trying to figure it out. And then you start looking at like the medical school curriculum and how much is taught on exercise and nutrition and things like that. But really, there's probably more classes on how to talk to patients than there is like on optimal nutrition and performance.
Totally. And then we could also dive down the rabbit hole of how much education in the medical world is around pharmaceutical drugs to enhance, the insurance companies and the return on investment for a lot of these people going 8+ years in debt to pursue this medical degree. And I love that philosophy of question everything. That doesn't make doctors wrong at all. It just means, hey, let's have a conversation around it. Let's have a debate. And, there's also a potential argument for the placebo effect, right? Whatever you think is going to be the benefit of said supplement, said protocol, said mindset, said breathing pattern or exposure therapy, it's going to work until it doesn't work anymore. And then we're going to have to alter, how we, impose those things on our day-to-day lifestyle and training. But what I love about what you're doing, Brian, is you're your own unique human experience. You experiment with yourself, and you don't just do it throughout your NFL career, but you've done it as a human being after your NFL career. And so I want to touch, before we move on to your post-career life currently, on what was your experience like with the Texans, where, all right, you made it. You're now a captain. You now have a solidified contract. You've been through every professional football league that there is, basically. You've argued with agents. You've, fought tooth and nail for your body to respond through injury. And now you finally made it. What did that feel like? And what was your experience with the Texans like as a starting NFL linebacker?
Yeah, I started like one game at linebacker. Mostly I was special teams. Like that's where I carved out a niche. But like I loved it. I came into the Texans week 3 or 4 of the 2015 season. I got signed off the Vikings practice squad. And it was kind of a whirlwind, but like I had this basically opportunity at one point to choose whether to stay on the Vikings practice squad for like a guaranteed year of active salary. So I could make $440,000 guaranteed, or I could, if you get signed off a practice squad, you only get 3 active games guaranteed. So I could go and do like a 3-game tryout for the Texans is basically how it was framed to me. And I had a really good buddy push me towards taking the opportunity and betting on myself. Dan Purse, I was in the airport trying to decide whether to stay or go, but my agent got me to the airport, and I got $500,000 sounded like a great choice, and with the opportunity to get up for the Vikings that year. And my buddy hit me with whatever you've played 3 different years in 3 different leagues to play in the NFL, not practice in the NFL. And I was like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. I hopped on the plane, took the chance, and it was just a whirlwind. They didn't have a lot of reverence for special teams down there. And I came from Mike Prefer's special teams program in Minnesota, where it was paramount. And I took a lot of his teachings and applied it down there to other guys, and just took it incredibly seriously and became a leader in the special teams department down there really quickly, and was very productive my first year. I led the NFL in special teams tackles, only playing 12 games.
Congrats.
So
that's badass.
Yeah, it was, and like it was almost unreal, like how fast the season went. And the pro personnel guy down there at the time, who eventually became the GM, Brian Gain, he was always kind of in my ear. So I was really like scared for my job. Like the first 8 weeks I was there anyways, like every week he'd chirp me in the lunch line or something and say like, hey, you really got to learn to use your hands more. Or I don't know if we can keep you around, like putting me on my toes and keep me on my heels kind of deal. And
fear is a great motivator right there.
Oh, guaranteed. And I've learned that through my NFL experience too. Like I don't need to be coddled. I don't need to be like you don't have to be my friend. Like you can be a great guy, but like I need to be coached hard, and I need to be held accountable. And I get that out of myself, but like I elevate when coaches demand it. And it's just part of the learning experience. But that year went by fast. It was nonstop movement. I came into a good locker room where John Simon, who I'd been training with for a few years, was down on the team. I lived with him for a second before I got my feet settled. Dr. Serrano had represented Cushing at one point, and so like I kind of came into a locker room where at least I have guys to train with, which is big for me. So we kind of had a cool little lifting group down there, and then after that, like yeah, it was just. I don't think besides my last year, like even my last year, we got a new special teams coach that wasn't too keen on keeping me. But I was in a leadership role, and obviously they kept me. But yeah, I never was comfortable. Like the job security was never a benefit for me. I didn't like the year that I should have had leverage. I didn't produce as much my third year, so I didn't have a lot of leverage. And that's why I think it's incredible when guys leverage these big contracts. Even guys get to second contracts and get some like mild leverage for a $2 million contract or anything. It's just the amount of like blood, sweat, and tears that go into getting that leverage is rare.
Totally, man.
Most people don't make it past that first contract. And so like anytime anybody gets paid, I'm so happy for them. It's just they earned it. Like you can say people are overpaid, making 30, 40, $50 million. No. Like everybody in the NFL is good. It takes a man to take another man's job, or like, it's such a tough league that I don't think people really appreciate what goes into getting a contract.
For sure, man. I also want to share like a peek behind the curtain. Like the average career in the NFL is 3 years. And, you know, within that 3 years, there's peaks and valleys, and then there's tons of uncertainty. There's injuries. There's, you know, what's popularized now, the concussions that are coming. There's, you know, the affiliation with Toradol and pain management. Will you touch on that a little bit where, you know, you look at the NBA and the MLB, And there's longer term contracts. There's a lot more money guaranteed to these guys. But then when you look at the NFL, we're seeing it on the HBO show Ballers with DJ, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, around how it's a little bit of an owner's league. There's not as much guaranteed to the players, but there's a lot of risk. You're putting your body on the line. And in some cases, that's on a practice squad. That's, you're there for a day. And if you don't fit for whatever reason, somebody doesn't believe in you, somebody saw some sort of tape that didn't fit with their processes and procedures with that organization, you're gone. And that doesn't pay the bills for your families. That doesn't support people's kids. What is this peek behind the curtain like for people with pain management, concussions, and the uncertainty associated with the NFL dream?
Yeah, like that. I mean, there's a lot to unpack in each one of those categories. The pain management, I think it shows up as a problem for certain guys. They're restricting Toradol. Most people can get it. I when I was coming out of the CFL, I found out I had a blood condition, so I wasn't even allowed to take Toradol like that anyways. I have unexplained low blood platelets, just randomly found that out. I do think it's overprescribed, like on some of the injuries for sure, not all of the injuries. I've seen teammates battle with it. I've helped them battle it. And I was a PA rep for 3 years with the Texans too, so I learned the resources. I tried to help as much as I could. I had a really good PA rep that helped me because I tweaked my hamstring preseason game 4 in Minnesota. And so I just paying it forward, I became the rep because there's a vacancy down in Houston and tried to help as many guys as possible. But when you start to pull back the curtain, you see how cutthroat it is from like a top-down scenario where a big thing is like end of training camp. And like they're trying to make roster cuts. They're trying to figure out what guys can go where. They're trying to hide guys on injured reserve. They're trying to do a lot of things. But one of the worst things that they do is guys that are banged up at the end of the preseason, they're just trying to get them on the field so they can legally cut them. So like if they're a hamstring guy or something, like if they can get you on film, putting your jersey on and running on the practice field just to do a dynamic warm-up or individual, they say, hey, just get through individual today. Just go really easy. They can cut you without an injury settlement, which is potentially 1 to 3 game checks or just a small amount of money. But like to some guys that have nothing going in coming out of college or guys that mismanage their money, like that 10 grand or that 30 to 60 grand could like be what bridges them to the next step in their life and things like that. And like, that's the biggest thing I have a problem with. Not a lot of teams do it. I've seen it very minimally, but I've heard coaches peer pressure guys into trying to play that 4th game. And then like, I hear it. So as a PA rep, I go and grab them after and say, hey, you don't have to do this. Like, this is what they're trying to do. It's really hard to tell a kid that his coach is saying that you're cut if you don't play this week and you need this game and all those things. And like everything in your heart and soul that's been bleeding for this spot or this chance to play in the NFL, and you think you might be able to play, it puts guys in a very bad position, and it compromises people's passion for the game.
For sure. And I just want to note the PA reference is Players Association for people listening. The NFL Players Association helps create education for players as they're navigating their career a little bit. And when you look at the business side, it's so fascinating, the narrative that gets portrayed, because, if you sit out a few games, all of a sudden it's, oh, this player's selfish. He's not a team guy. He's not, managing his body. Maybe he wasn't in shape when he showed up to training camp, and they paint this narrative, which is selfishness of the athlete. But that could be part of it for some of the stories out there. I don't want to blanket statement everybody's story, but I also just want to take note that like it's a business. You look at people working executive positions or trying to climb the corporate ladder, and eventually they hit a ceiling. What do? Maybe they pivot and they move to another organization. Why? Because they're trying to provide for their families. And sometimes that gets misrepresented in the professional athlete realm, because they're like, oh, there's no loyalty anymore. Everybody's chasing money. We're seeing the nil and money thrown around with, 18-year-old college athletes now, and what's going on with college football and college basketball, which is a conversation for a whole other time. But I think it's really cool that you just make note of that, the business side of the NFL, and not just the NFL, but, professional sports in general. I think it's important for people to understand those things.
Yeah, I can't speak on other sports as much. I've coached some guys in other major league sports and that kind of thing. But as far so like we can probably retrace before we set this up, but the guaranteed contracts and those kind of things, like those aren't in CBAs. Like that was a cultural change. Like, and a lot of that comes from your ability to lock out. I can't remember the year the NBA did. The 10 biggest free agents held out, and they got their contracts guaranteed, and eventually it trickles down. And the same with baseball and hockey. So I don't believe that's in their CBA. It may be now, but their initial transition from unguaranteed to guaranteed money. So like we're seeing that happen now. And I think maybe eventually it'll bleed down to the entire roster, or at least like the top 2/3. So we're going in the right direction there. But I think people kind of misconstrue the guaranteed money thing. It's like not, I don't think it's written into the players' contracts, but I don't think it's in the CBA for those leagues.
It's a little bit biased by the ownership. They're making an investment into the players, and the players are obviously putting their bodies, their minds, and their livelihood on the line. And it's just interesting to kind of understand the contractual arrangement there.
Yeah, I kind of have I'm biased, obviously. Like I played hurt when I probably shouldn't have. The passion in me, and like, was it the smartest thing? No, I have my regrets in those world, but the leadership, the intangibles that they preach, and like what they sell, why they're giving this guy money, or they're not giving this guy money, or they're giving Clowney a hard time, or whatever it ends up being, because these intangibles things, I don't see in the experience I've had in the NFL, I don't see a lot of that. I think that's just lip service. I believe I was a captain and a leader on the team, and those words don't even show up in contract negotiations, or they have very little leverage. It's more on production, and the players understand that. It's what have you done for me lately? It's NFL, not for long. So the ability to constantly produce is always there, like the consciousness of the ability to produce. So I don't think anybody fights it when they don't produce. Like I didn't produce my last year, but I played hurt for 10 games. So my leverage is with that GM. That GM gets fired, I have no leverage, and that kind of thing. So it just that was my experience. Yeah, I think as much as we preach the character guys and the values and leadership and things like that, it comes down to production, ability, things like that. But yeah, different coaches see it different ways. Different guys get bad raps, while they might be better on other teams where they're not required to practice every practice or go hard every practice or things like that. Like there's different level of contact in every team across the NFL, in training camp and in season and that kind of stuff too. There's different expectations on 8-year veterans than a rookie and things like that, where like there's a bunch of nuances where it's hard to pinpoint the general consensus of the NFL on one business decision or the other. But I just think it is a business. The players know it's a business. The owners and coaches obviously know it's a business, but the coaches end up playing mediator there, and they try and push you towards what's best for the team and not what's best for you, because you are your own business in the NFL. Like you are the income producing businessman in your contract. And yeah, it helps when the team wins. Like when the facts are that like if your team's in the playoffs, like the chance of you getting re-signed in the NFL is higher because you're coming off a winning team. Teams want winners. Like there's different nuances like that too. But at the end of the day, it's production, and guys have to be held accountable for not only their production on the field, but their choices on whether to play hurt or not, or what is hurt and what is injured and things like that. It's just so person to person, it's hard to nail down. But yeah.
Totally, man. Well, I appreciate the context there. And, just to highlight you for a moment, man, you went through peaks, valleys, everything in between, the highs, the lows, and you made it, man. And that's something that you should be very proud of. And, even though you're no longer in the NFL, you are still transitioning. And you're doing a really cool thing where you joined Corey G and the 4 a.m. boys. I kind of briefly hinted at it earlier. And,
the 4 a.m. crew. The 4 a.m. crew.
The 4 a.m. crew. And dude, I just think it's so cool when I hear you guys discuss that. Will you share a little bit about that to our listeners? And also just to note a quick little highlight, you competed in your first powerlifting meet and you hit a 606 deadlift, a 562 squat, and your body weight was at 237. That's badass, man. That's strong.
It's not bad. It's not bad. It was fun. It was fun to compete. Yeah. So like in transitioning, like you learn really quick, like how much of your identity was in your sport. Especially I did it for 8 years professionally. So like my identity, my structure, my support group, my culture, like everything around me was not taken from me. Like I made my choices on where to live and things like that. But I went through this limbo period where like, am I playing? Am I training for football or am I moving on? And it was like, I still have some conversations, so I got to stay in some level of shape. And it was just like not a good place for me. And I was training on my own schedule, and COVID hit, and I had guys training at my house in my garage. And I had this girlfriend at the time that didn't like that the guys were training at the house because she was super COVID. They're super left. But anyways, so like it just, there's a lot going on, and a lot of transition happening from a structure standpoint. From just my day-to-day life was completely different, because when I was under contract, like I was always pretty dialed. And so I'm referring more to my second year out than my first. My first year, I still trained like I was playing in the NFL, and I got some workouts and that kind of thing. But the second year was 2020 really. And then some guys that trained me for a little while in Houston, Dose and Taj Khan, came up to see Corey G, and they invited me out there. And I knew about Old School and I'd seen Corey at Dr. Serrano's office a bunch and things like that. So I said, yeah, I'd join, and went out there and at the 4 a.m. and kind of got some juice from it. And then linked with Corey, and I hopped on his podcast, and then I started to creep out there once a week. And then eventually I got into it full swing, because that structure of those single days spaced out, I was getting more done before 9 a.m. than I was getting done in entire days, and just intuitively felt it. And I was like, okay, I need to do this some more. So like it eventually like on-ramped for a year. Like I started going more and more and more. And then I just did my first powerlifting competition about a month ago now. And like I was going 4 or 5 days a week, and it was just medicine for me. Like obviously I was still training, but training with a different intention. Like I wasn't always maxing out. I was failing and those kind of things. But I got this little high from stepping under a bar that I didn't know if I could lift or not, whether it was on squat or deadlift or bench or anything like that. And like that was the hit I needed, because like whenever I put myself in those scenarios, if I fail, like I'm motivated. If I succeed, I'm motivated. I'm juiced up the rest of the day. So like it was a win-win just being in that powerlifting world with those guys. And it's a good culture too. Like it's guys from all walks of life. It's guys all different age ranges, but everybody's there to compete and get strong. And there's good chirping that goes on in the group. There's business talk in the group. There's a lot of things where it's just I got a lot in one fell swoop. I got structure. I got camaraderie again, and then and that started pushing me to get out of my comfort zone elsewhere.
Totally, man. I also really love how it's non-negotiable time, right? Like the phone might be ringing. You may have business deals, speaking arrangements, different things that push and pull your attention in varying directions. But at 4 a.m., most people are still sleeping. And so that is 100% time for you and your 4 a.m. crew to just put in work. And it wasn't just work in a physical sense. You were also getting cognitive capacity out of it and learning, how are these guys thinking? What is, life transition after football? I've identified as this thing. How do I move on to this other thing? And it sounds like, when we self-reflect on life, it's like the first 20 to 30 years is the building of the ego. The ego's in control a lot. And then after you're hit with a little bit of adversity and you move on to another chapter, it's like, oh, now I need to deconstruct my ego. Now I need to trim the fat because I've kind of over accumulated and there's a lot of noise. And so the integration of lifting, it's more than just how much weight is on the bar, how fast, what was your time. It's what goes through your brain. How do you deconstruct some of those demons? How do you understand that the iron never lies, just like Henry Rollins always says? And now you're connecting with this group of guys that are innovators, they're entrepreneurs, they're getting after it, and they're competing against themselves. Why? Because they're trying to optimize themselves. Life is too awesome to just live in a one-dimensional box. And I think it's so cool that you were able to link with these guys and I've listened to Corey G on a few different podcasts now, and he's a stud, man. I got to connect with him one of these days.
Yeah, I'll connect you for sure. He's an electric factory, man. Like just how his discipline and consistency, and like he applies that in different areas of his life, parenting, all those things, and you see the success and like eventual what consistently just showing up does, whether you're hurt or not. And there's so many lessons I could speak on Corey for a long time, but I'm trying to figure out a good way, because there's so much there that like I've thought through and I've felt. And because like even playing, like part of the reason why I pursued football and knew I could play and wanted the NFL lifestyle or what X, Y, and Z, like I always loved the weight room. There wasn't a lot of places like school. Yes, like you get out what you put out, like where you spend your time is where you see results. But like I don't think there's a more tangible place than in the weight room. The lessons you learn, the growth that can happen that you can track, what you can measure. So I always had honestly, like my passion for the weight room was equivalent to my passion for football. And it obviously they both fed each other, and that eventually led to, like this opportunity to like not abandon the weight room. And like, I don't think I'll ever do that by any sense of the mean. Like strength's never a weakness. Like I'll never not want to be strong. And like in the whole transition period, like where like I was getting into the breath work, I was getting into like the coaching side of exposure and things like that. And like, then it just bled into chasing edges too, where I didn't want to just be confined to being a breathwork coach or mental skills or anything like that. Like what I love is the weight room and supplements and chasing edges, and so and I use that to coach inside of MindStrong and all those things too. But yeah, like it eventually like tore apart my identity as a football player, and like my identity became my capability. Like I think capability is where everybody's identity really lies. Like you can say I'm an NFL player, but really I'm an athlete, or I'm athletic, and I'm good at fast-paced decision-making. And like my capability is my identity, like just spurred my curiosity to expand my capability. So like absolute strength, powerlifting fueled that. Jiu-jitsu and boxing, that fueled my violence. Like the breathwork, meditation, the sauna and ice, nature, things like that fueled my peace and my capability. And so I eventually became more capable, and like that got me confident again. And it wasn't getting lost in like I'm not on TV anymore, I'm not a NFL player. Like no, like I'm still capable of that. I still believe to this day I'm capable of playing in the NFL. That they just don't agree. But my capability is what defines me. My knowledge is what defines me, not I'm this coach, so I have to have that knowledge. No, like I'm going to be knowledgeable of a lot of things. And like same as like understanding the body, you got to know everything to even get close. So it's like I can't say I'm a breath coach and not understand like diet influence, concussions, things like that, how everything influences the breath. So like I don't think my curiosity will ever stop, because I don't think I'll ever learn enough to satisfy like enough knowledge.
For sure, man. Life is full of so much.
Yeah.
And I think your terminology there, expanding capabilities, kind of summarizes our awesome conversation today. And you had a couple things that I want to note to people. And there's a metaphor in what I'm about to say, but it's along the lines of smaller the plane, bigger the adventure. And what I love about that is like sometimes becoming a master of the mundane, or really paying attention to the really small things, you realize they were the big things in the end. And one of those things, you mentioned it briefly a moment ago, and that's your connection with nature. And you had a cool caption that I really got to share with people. No service, no Wi-Fi, no dings, no pings or rings for almost a week. Get the fuck outside. And Brian, that's badass. I think it's super cool. And people undervalue the importance of nature. Will you share your relationship with nature and the importance of it within the human experience?
Yeah, and so that kind of started like last year or two. I was playing with Harvey and MindStrong. Like a lot of what we like started learning and preaching, like obviously along breath work, was just like other physiological cues, vision, what keeps your vision like peripheral or like in a horizon view or lens, and like what really downregulates the system. And like I've always been a fan of nature. Like I joke about this now with my girlfriend, but like my favorite book growing up was Hatchet, and I always want to get put in a Hatchet scenario, minus the plane crash. But nature, like just, I wasn't aware of how medicinal it was for me. And then like, I started learning about like being grounded from Dr. Toma, even back when I was in college. And so I understood like bare feet on the ground's good. It unclumps your red blood cells. Okay, I knew that. So like that was always in my back pocket. And then I started walking on gravel with Dr. Toma. And then me and Harvey started going on barefoot hikes. And like the different level of meditation and like relief that nature gave me that way is because like now I'm conscious and like meditating on where every foot's going. And now I'm even more out of my head. And then just like doing breath work in nature like hits twice as hard. Even like doing sauna and ice with like a beautiful view is like a whole nother high for me. And so like just intuitively I felt it. And then eventually like through COVID and those kind of things, like, dude, I was driving at least an hour each way 4 times a week to go get in like nature for an hour or two, just because like that was that good for me. And it was just like a retreat. But now like that post, I went up out in Montana for a week, and that was my first time. Like the most I've done is like a weekend camping trip, and then to go out there with, again, no phone, literally 25 miles from the next human, and then like another hour flight, like little single engine plane flight from the city, and just being in the environment, like, and that's where I think people kind of sell like the sauna and ice short sometimes, because I think like initially my whole bit on it and understanding on it is like humans' 2 biggest obstacles back in the day used to be environmental stress and food scarcity. And we've solved those problems in spades, like between DoorDash and like obviously AC and heat in our cars, like, and then like you read Michael Easter's book Comfort Crisis, and people are spending 93% of their day inside. Like, we're not in the elements. And the first thing I noticed out there, one, obviously the peace, like I was like checking my phone like habitually, like maybe like 30 times the first day. And then the second day, like I barely even reached for it. Then I didn't even bring it like the last couple days. And like those habits showed up, but like just being out away from that stuff and being in the true environment was just like, and I also underpacked somehow. Like I didn't have any cold gear besides like some like wool under things. Bad on me. But you're in this constant flux with the environment and the temperature, and you got to get comfortable being like a little colder than you usually are, or what's considered comfortably cold or whatnot. And then you get the spikes in the sun, you shed a layer, and then then you're sweating, then it's back, and just like you're ebb and flowing with nature. And then out where we're at, like weather can roll on like that. So it's snowing, then it's raining, then it's everything. And like that was such a eye opener for me, like how much I'm not outside and how much I don't have to adapt constantly. I just get like a quick little fix between my house and the car, and like, okay, now I know I need to wear when I get out of the car or something like that. But this, like that was probably the biggest thing I took away. But then just my relationship with my phone was highlighted, obviously, by checking it. But then like right when I came back, like right when we landed back and my phone started dinging, like it wasn't like a panic attack, but I was like, oh shit. Like it just, and like, I was like, oh, all my responsibilities hit me, which happens with vacation and stuff anyways. But like just the not having been around the buzzing phone and stuff was so, I don't know, it was peaceful for me. And then, so now, I set some hard boundaries on my phone since I got back. And I mean, that was probably 2 or 3 months ago now, and they've stuck, and they've been really good for me as far as production and peace. It's just establishing those boundaries and holding to them was big for me. But nature taught me that. Like nature, like I hadn't been that removed from it in so long, and like it just that's the easiest lesson. And I like, hopefully the caption sold it. But
Totally, man.
But I just think I think everybody should experience it. Read Comfort Crisis. Michael Easter does a good job putting the science and putting his experience into words, doing a month out up in Alaska and stuff. So I think everybody should do that at least once in their life, or do it regularly just for a checkout. Because like even the fact that we have to put science to how good nature is now is ridiculous. But I think in his book, you have to get like 3 hits of 20 minutes outside with no phone. And then like every quarter of the year, you need to do like deep nature for like 3 days or something like that. And like depression and anxiety and all these things go down. And it's like, okay, like let's just be human again. Let's be outside more. Let's experience more heat and cold. Let's breathe properly. Like, let's eat one ingredient foods. Like, let's just be human. We'll be okay.
Totally, man. I mean, you summed it up right there. Just the simplicity of being more human. And dude, I really do believe that we're cut from the same cloth. And I enjoyed every bit of our conversation, from, navigating your NFL career and your pursuit to peak expression within your passion of football, to, how you've grown and evolved and created this metaphorical armor within the weight room that's led to so much cognitive discipline and relationship building and connection, and more tools in your toolbox to navigate the entrepreneurial world, especially as you continue to grow with Harvey Martin within the MindStrong Project and within your podcast, the Chasing Edges podcast. Brian, it was such a pleasure to connect with you. Thank you for doing this with us today, man.
Easy, Bryce. You're the man. I appreciate it. Yeah, no doubt we're cut from the same cloth. I'm looking forward to chopping it up again.
For sure, man. For those of you listening, if you enjoyed my conversation with Brian today, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. Until next time, guys, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Are you over 35 and in need of a solid training program? Are you looking to improve your athleticism and keep up with the younger athletes in your CrossFit gym? Then look no further than our Invictus Masters program. This program places year-round emphasis on mobility and stability exercises with movements that we have seen directly benefit our Masters athletes. Our program is led by Nicole DeHart and offers a training program designed specifically for Masters athletes who are looking to compete at a higher level in the sport of CrossFit. Some of our top Masters athletes in the world train with us, including CrossFit Games champion Kevin Kester, Matt Beals, and Pat Sprague. You can learn more about their stories and the Invictus Masters program by checking out their episodes right here on the Invictus Mindset Podcast. If you'd like more information about the current training cycle or to join the Invictus Masters program, please email Nicole at invictusathlete.com. That's NICHOLE at invictusathlete.com.